Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Bosher, and today I want to show you how to make a dirty, steezy, comb-filtered pulse wave squelch sound using the Thor synthesizer in Reason. The track that you just heard was something I made for this tutorial real quick, but I want to show you how to make that type of almost acid-like squelch sound from scratch, so let's get started. I do have a new project already created, and for time's sake I did just copy and paste the notes from the previous project over to here. And in my new rack, I do have a combinator created, so just right click and create a new combinator. In the combinator, right click and let's start off by creating instance of Thor. Now, of course, when it comes to making any type of sound, there are no right or wrong answers. Whatever works for you is what works best, but this is definitely a good starting point, and it's easily customizable, so I highly recommend doing that once we're finished making this type of sound. Click to show the programmer and make sure to right click and reset the device or initialize patch depending on what version or Reason you're using. I'm going to leave the pitch bend range alone just because I'm not using it, but completely up to you. I'm going to set the keyboard mode to mono retrig since we're going to be utilizing the filter envelope for modulation, and that way it'll retrigger every time we use a note. And in the analog oscillator section here, we're actually going to keep its default here, and we're going to change the octave to 3, and we're going to change the waveform to a pulse wave. We're going to set the pulse width here to 44. So hold shift, click and drag and hone in on that specific number. Next, we're going to click the number 2 to enable the second oscillator to the first filter, and we're going to create another analog oscillator. We're going to set this one's octave to 2, and we're going to again set it to a pulse wave. We're going to set the pulse width to about 43. So real quick, if we take a listen to what we have with the default patch that we started with, this is what we have. So as you can hear, just two square waves on top of each other, nothing too crazy. A little bit of a filter going on, but we'll soon change that. Next, we're going to go to the amplitude modulation from oscillator 2 section here. We're going to set this all the way to 127. And in a previous tutorial, I have explained what that does, but essentially the second oscillator is going to modulate the amplitude of the first oscillator, and it starts to create really nice sidebands and a lot of nice texture. Next, we're going to go to the mixer section, and we're going to set it to 46. That way, the first oscillator is playing out a little heavier than the second one, but nothing too crazy. So let's take a listen to what we have now. And as you can hear, already a lot more grit just from the amplitude modulation, so it's very, very useful. Next, we're going to go to the first filter section here. We're going to change it from a low pass filter to a comb filter. And I have explained what comb filters do in a previous tutorial. Essentially, it duplicates the waveform, and that actually creates a filter on top of itself like a comb. And that way, this filter frequency knob essentially dictates the timing and how far apart or close they are to each other. So let's set the filter frequency here to 96.3 Hertz. The resonance to 87. That way the transients of the actual filter will be quite high and they'll be quite beefy. Let's set the polarity to negative. And then let's change the filter envelope amount here to 104. And then I'm actually going to use filter 1 velocity here, making it to where how hard you press the key dictates how much the filter envelope messes with the comb filter here. So I'm going to leave that at 47. It definitely gives you more customization, and I definitely recommend you messing with that. Let's take a listen to what we have with the comb filter now. And as you can hear, the filter envelope is essentially modulating every note that we play thanks to mono retrig, and it's really, really nice. Starting to get that old school feel, but we'll definitely start to refine it a lot more here. So at this point, let's go to this section here, and let's click Shaper 2, Filter 2. Make sure to enable Filter 2 to the amp, so that way when we utilize this second filter, it'll actually go to the amp and be played out. Now, make sure to click on 1 and 2 to enable both the first and second oscillator to the second filter here. And let's change Filter 2 to a low pass filter. And this is just for cutoff control. Completely up to you how you would like to arrange this. But for the tutorial sound, I'm going to set the frequency to 317 Hertz. I'm going to keep the resonance at 0, but then if you want peaks with your cutoff, go for it. Completely up to you. I'm going to set the filter 2 envelope amount to 104, just like the first filter. That way we're going to be utilizing this on the low pass as well, but if you open it all the way up, it won't really do anything, but you can definitely do that. Now for this, I'm going to turn down the filter 2 velocity amount completely down. I just want the comb filter to affect the velocity, or vice versa, I should really say. So now let's take a listen to what we have with the low pass filter here, and then we'll start to mess with the filter envelope parameters. And it is definitely beefier, and that low pass filter definitely makes sure to cut off a lot of harsh frequencies, but those harsh frequencies can really give you some nice texture if you want to open that filter up, so it's definitely fun. Okay, now when it comes to the filter envelope section here, in the tutorial sound I kept it at the attack at 0, but definitely try to raise it if you want a more gradual rise in filter action. But for the tutorial, I'm keeping it at 0 for more of a stab effect. I'm going to set the decay to about 2.24 seconds, so it has a nice tail, but again, completely up to you how you'd like to do that as far as how this affects the filter here and here. The sustain will be about negative 35.9. Nothing too crazy. But basically that will dictate how loud the decay is after it's completed its cycle. 35.9. And the release is at about 3.2 milliseconds, otherwise known as all the way down. That way there is nothing released, but again, completely up to you. Next, I'm going to go to the amp envelope, and it's really simple. I'm just going to set the attack a little higher to about 17.4 so it doesn't click when I trigger a note. The release a little high to about 159 so it doesn't click once again. But you can go a little lower and it won't click as well. I'm going to set the decay and sustain all the way up so it doesn't lose any volume over time when a note's being played out. And so let's take a listen to what we have so far. As you can hear, the sound's clipping a little bit. We will be basically adding a reverb, which doesn't make it louder, that's for sure, but it definitely kind of drowns out those higher frequencies, makes it not clip as much at all. But we're going to go to the mod matrix first. We're going to go to the first source section here. I'm going to set the filter envelope, the amount at 78. The destination will be oscillator 1's pulse width. So we'll be using the filter envelope to modulate the pulse width as well for a lot more movement. We're going to go to the second source and we're going to set it filter envelope again. We're going to set it again to 78, and we're just going to do it to oscillator 2's pulse width as well, just for a little bit of unity, but I definitely recommend messing with these dry wet amounts essentially. Next, I'm going to go to the filter 3 section real quick, and I'm just going to add a state variable, high pass 12 filter, and I'm just going to cut off those low frequencies so it's gives it room for any sort of bass kick or any sort of bass line that you want to add on top, or I should say underneath. So I'm going to set it to about 193 Hertz, but completely up to you. And I'm going to turn down all the knobs here, so no filter envelope action, no velocity action, anything like that. So let's take a listen before we add a reverb. And again, it's clipping a little bit, but it's really beefy, it's really old school, it's really gritty, it's got that squelch type of sound. So you can use this and you're good to go. But I'm just going to create a reverb on top of it real quick. So just right click on the device, create a RV7000, click to show the remote programmer here. I'm just going to use the regular default Hall setting as well. I'm just going to lower the dry wet to about maybe 32. I'm going to dampen out the sound so it's not as bright as far as the reverb is concerned, to about 93. Turn the decay down to about maybe 28. And again, these are pretty arbitrary numbers, but just with the reverb, it definitely fills it out even a little bit more. So as you can see, after I added that reverb when it was playing out, I just essentially messed with the filter 3 drive just enough to make it not clip. But you can always compress and just attenuate transients and round them off, and you can even make it a little fatter and it will actually not clip, but completely up to you. At this point, we're finished. That's how you make a type of dirty, steezy, comb filtered acid squelch almost. And I will save this. I'll save the entire patch. We'll just do with the reverb as well. Actually, for download's sake, let's just do the Thor patch. It'll be a lot easier for people to get. No headaches or anything like that. We'll just make it ABB comb pulse squelch tutorial. I'll make that available for you to download. And thank you so much for watching. We're all finished up here, but I hope you definitely learned something. And we're all students in this, so please show me what you did with this sound, and I'd love to hear all of your sounds that you make or what you did with mine. And so definitely thank you so much for watching. And if you like the video, please don't forget to subscribe. So any comments, feedback, concerns, let me know, and I'd love to hear any feedback. So other than that, we'll see you next time.